Okay, awesome. Well, howdy everyone. Again, my name is Sam, and I am the co-founder of TrovBase. And today I'm going to be presenting the beta version of TrovBase, which is a software platform that embeds best practices into research data management pipelines so that data sets and their outputs are fully reproducible. You can think of us kind of like GitHub, but for data sets, because we make it easier to collaborate on data sets and we enable a researcher and their collaborators to see the history of their data management pipeline with logging and version control. And today I'm joined by my co-founders. This is Nathaniel Beckhofer. He's an econ PhD candidate at UCSD and our resident data science guru. This is Andrew Hornstra. He's our developer and our lord of data management. And we are your friendly fellowship of the best practices. And down there in the corner, that's SPSS, but we don't like to talk about him because he makes everything more difficult than it needs to be. And the reason that we are presenting today is because first, we want to enable anyone to conduct best practices for data management and do it in a reproducible way, because nobody should suffer so much fear and doubt over best practices. And second, because we are still very much in the early stages of building this tool, and we want your feedback. We do not want this to be just another tool that is pushed upon researchers and forced to make them use this just because someone higher up asked them to. We want this to be a tool that researchers love, not just because it makes research reproducible, but because it saves time. So please let us know throughout the presentation what we should change, what we should add, what we should prioritize, and you can let us know in the chat. You can connect with us on Twitter. We're just TrovBase at TrovBase. And my email should be on most of the slides, so feel free to email as well. I'll give kind of a high level overview, and then we'll jump into a demo. So what we're trying to do with the software platform, again, is to get people working with data in a reproducible way that's all tracked, so that the entire timeline of how a data set came to be, along with the analysis that followed, can be transparent and obvious, from configuration to data collection to analysis. And we can do this because of our emphasis on the configuration. Data sets are validated because data intake follows the rules set in the configuration. The configuration specifies what type of data is allowed in each column, so that no matter how many collaborators you have inputting data, you'll have an inherently clean data set, because if it doesn't match the configuration, it doesn't go in. If you're into databases, you can think of this configuration kind of like a schema. Also note that the configuration doubles as a data dictionary, which you can download and send. So this means that you don't have to sift through multiple spreadsheets and documents to understand the documentation and the labeling. And also the configuration enables us to provide dataset aware extract creation. So data pre-processing tasks all take place in the browser. So you can point and click to filter and reshape, and then you can have subsets of that data set. And since we know what type of data lives where, it means that we can automatically generate certain types of analysis. And I'm not talking about a dashboard with a point and click to get a pie chart. I'm talking about Python and R script that was written as if it were written by an expert. And if you are an expert, you can always modify or build onto that code to customize your visualization. That analysis can then be sent to your collaborators via a permalink so that they can reproduce in just one click with information about the underlying data, about the metadata, and of course the decisions that were made along the way to arrive at the current version of analysis or extract. So with that overview, let me go ahead and share my screen to show TrovBase itself. The caveat here is, again, this is our beta version. So it's very much a works in progress here. And I just want to make sure, can you all still see the TrovBase link here? Okay, great. So my dashboard looks a little bit messy because I have a bunch of data sets here that I've configured, as well as some that have been shared with me by collaborators. And what you'll first do when you get onto TrovBase is you'll start by creating a new data set. This can be an empty data set. So this would be like an empty schema starting from scratch, or you can use a template. And a template is a configuration of a data set that has been either previously configured by you, by one of your collaborators, or has been made available on TrovBase. So we plan to have configurations for commonly used publicly available data sets. So for instance, the General Social Survey, maybe the National Cancer Database. And in fact, if there are any data sets that you use frequently in your field, let us know so that we can put that on the docket to get into the configuration. So we'll go ahead and use this Palmer Penguins data set config. And we'll just call it example for the demo. Give it a little description, and then we can create using the template. And what you see here is the configuration. So this is pre-specifying what is allowed to go into each column. And we can always edit this configuration. But for instance, this first column, we could go in and edit, and it shows us that these are the only 3 species that the data set will take. If it's misspelled, it's not going to take it, which will end up saving you a lot of time cleaning. You can always add different species if you want. You can also add variables. So for instance, if you were something like a life science researcher, maybe you would collect number of peptides in the sample. And remember, this doubles as your data dictionary. So these descriptions are important. But I want to show you a little feature here. And this will show how, some of the ways in which we guide best practices. So for instance, if I had started this with a capital P, it would say, hey, this isn't really best practice. It's best practice to have these in all lowercase. So it'll give you this little warning. Or for instance, if I had something like a special character, it would say, hey, that's also not best practice. And it'll change it to peptide underscore number underscore, as opposed to having that asterisk there. We can make other customizations. So for instance, maybe we want it to be a whole number. Maybe it can't be less than 0. We also have templates for variables. So for instance, if you're doing something with like country codes, we would have that pre-configured so you don't have to type in a bunch of country codes or gene names. Any taxonomy of things will be included. You can add collaborators, setting the permissions for what they're allowed to do. So we'll add Nathaniel Beckhofer, my co-founder, and we can make him a collaborator, an editor, read-only. And soon we'll have much more granular permissions so that you can specify, if, for instance, if you have something like PII data. But for now, we won't do that. We'll go back to the configuration and we can deploy. And what we'll see is now example demo is accepting submissions. So there's a couple different ways that you can import data. You can copy a data entry link, and it'll show something like a form. So you can fill this out. This would be good for something like a survey. Eventually, we also want to have some plugins into things like Qualtrics to enhance the survey capabilities. And you can see this preview of the submission row. So this is what it would look like in the data set. Or if you already have the data set and you already have like the CSV file, you can simply drag and drop here. And it automatically does that validation. So it says, hey, this doesn't match the configuration. You need to do something about it. Or if there were a negative number, it would say, hey, this doesn't match the configuration. You need to do something about it. Eventually, you'll be able to change these in platform. So you'll be able to manually do it with the caveat that TrovBase is logging everything. So it's going to flag if something has been manually changed, just for full transparency. But for now, we'll confirm and upload. Once we do that, we can start to explore the data set a little bit. So we'll select all the variables, and this is a dynamic preview of the data set. So it'll change as we make different specifications. So for instance, maybe I want to make a subset of the data set where we only have data on the male penguins. We can do that, and it'll change dynamically there. We can also include timestamps, so some metadata on when it was collected. We'll have other types of metadata as well, like where it was collected, who it was collected by. You can do basic things like reshape, so pivot wider, pivot longer. We'll also have joins as well as transformations. If you have M and F, you'd be able to transform that into a 0 and a 1. You can download that, and then you can save this subset as a canonical form of the data set that you can share with your collaborators. Once we have that, and we'll just go back to the regular version here, we can come over to the script generator and let's make a scatter plot. We'll include linear regression line, R squared, and we'll execute. And it pops out this nice visualization. You'll be able to edit this soon. So if you were already proficient in Python, you can always make different customizations you can add on to this. We'll have R pretty soon, probably in the next 4 to 6 month range. What we'll also have very soon is a button here that's a permalink. So you can send this visualization to a collaborator. They'll be able to see this visualization, see the underlying code. They'll be able to see the data, the metadata, and most importantly, the decisions that were made along the way to get to this visualization. Ultimately, what we would love to have, like this is how we know that we've really made it, is when publications come with a TrovBase link, so that if you are reading a paper, you can click that link, you may see a visualization, you can click that visualization and you can see the code and those decisions and be able to reproduce it yourself. The one other thing that we don't have yet, but is coming very soon, we have this on the back end, we just don't have the UI for it yet, is the logs. So soon there will be a side pane here that will show all of the logs of how that data set has transformed over time. So with that, we can go back to our presentation here and I'll kind of summarize some of the cool stuff that we're working on, and then we can go to questions. So first, TrovBase comes with full versioning and tracking of the whole data pipeline, as I mentioned. That means everything that you do is logged in a way that's friendlier than navigating to a particular Git commit or having to take care to make sure that each commit is granular enough. You can also create checkpoints and you can have specific versions of your data or analysis that you can link to. Second is permissions for collaboration along with security features. So if you have particular columns in a table that you don't want most people on your team to have access to, maybe because of PII, then you can go ahead and set those permissions. Or if you just have a couple specific cells that need to be kept private, you can, of course, do that as well. And third, TrovBase enables you to create data extracts so that you can share a specific transformed version of your underlying data as the canonical one for others to use for their analysis. I'm sorry, I don't have a Lord of the Rings meme for this. I couldn't think of anything creatively. And then finally, TrovBase gives you the ability to run Python and R scripts in the platform. So we have that environment all set up in the browser. It's not our server that's running things. Also, this means that users don't have to figure out how to configure Python or virtual environments because it all just works in the modern browser. And going back to the conversation that folks were having just before this in the water cooler segment, that's actually what some professors are already using TrovBase for. We did a pilot at Indiana University in their social science department, and they're using it as an educational tool for their undergraduates so that they can get their students up and running without wasting a bunch of class time on environment setup. We had like 119 undergrads use TrovBase in the fall of last semester. They were our very gracious guinea pigs, so they helped us find bugs. So shout out to those undergrads. And that's TrovBase. That's the high level of what TrovBase can do. It's still very much a works in progress. So we would love your feedback. We're looking for people to trial the platform for free. So if you're interested, definitely give us a shout. We'll help you get started. Or if you're teaching a class and want to incorporate data management, let us know, and we're happy to share what we've done with our partner organizations and universities. And that's it. Thanks, y'all.